Thank you, Darren Davis, for joining us today on our podcast, The Buyer's Edge. Now, you work at Brisick Whitney, and what I want you to talk about is tell us a little bit about your experience and what do you do?
Okay, so I've been at Brisick Whitney now coming on to 7 years. I'm a sales agent. My main area is that inner south pocket, Alexandria, Waterloo, Rosebery, some parts of Redfern and Surrey Hills as well.
What I want to mention is that you and I have known each other for quite some time.
Very long time.
I think it's like 5 years now since I've
Yep.
been a buyer's agent, and you have shown me so many properties, off market, pre-market, you name it, but I've never bought from you before.
Why?
And I love you.
I know.
I have so much time for you, but
thank
never
you.
bought from you. One day.
All right, one day. Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
It's going
show
to
me
happen.
something my clients will buy.
No, we nearly got very, very close. The George and Allen.
I remember that one.
Yeah. Well, we'll get there. Don't worry.
get there.
There's plenty to choose from.
Yeah. You're very dominant in your area. How did you make that happen for yourself?
Good
I'll
question.
stroke the ego a little bit.
No. Good question. Look, I think it's really important. I've been in the area for a long time. You know, let me just pick a suburb, for example, Waterloo. Like the infrastructure that's going in there, the urban planning, it's quite remarkable. So I think it's really, I live there as well, and I've lived there for sort of like 20 years. So, and I always tell the buyers that, and you see straight away that they're almost relieved. They form a closer relationship with the agent. The other thing too is, as cliche as it sounds, we're not just selling the property, you are selling the lifestyle. You have to talk about the new metro that's gone in, right down to the new sort of Woolworths metro going in down the road. You've got to be able to explain what all that development, is about. When is the housing estate going to be moved, and what are the development plans? So you've really got to sell the benefits and the lifestyle of the area. And sometimes I'll use my experiences as well. I'll start saying, I bought in here 15 years ago. There was nothing here. And then I can talk about the transformation and how property prices have increased. So I think it's just about being in one area for a long time and being able to sell the lifestyle benefits as well as the home.
Yeah, and you've lived it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you can sell the dream.
Sell the dream.
Yeah, I love it. We're going to be talking about buyers on your side of the fence. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand why it's important to work with selling agents and give them some tips on how to work with selling agents, because there's a lot of bad rap with buyers when we're sitting on this side about their experience with selling agents, and it doesn't have to be. So the very, very first question is, from your side of the fence, what makes a buyer stand out to a selling agent at an open home?
I think really it's the way they communicate, just being sort of genuine, honest, asking the right questions, showing interest, but not giving too much away, obviously. But I just think just by being genuine and asking the right questions makes a buyer stand out.
Yeah. What do you think those genuine questions should be?
Well, not straight about the price. Do you know what I mean? Not straight about, what's it going to take to buy the property, but asking more sort of, I guess, strategic questions. Do you have any written offers yet? How many contracts are out? How long the property's been on the market? Yeah.
I think that's important, especially when you're looking at a property that you really, really like. I know that when I was a selling agent, when you speak to buyers or you try to call them, they don't want to borrow of you.
No, exactly.
So, and then they ghost you.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are you ghosting me?
Yeah, I can't help you if you don't talk to me. Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the good things about sort of having, I guess, key market share is that you meet a lot of the buyers that you already know. You've already got relationships with them, and that does form another layer of trust with the buyers.
Yeah. Even if you don't like a property, let an agent know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about that communication, because if you don't like this one, what is it that you didn't like, so I can best help you for the next one? And we sort of keep narrowing it down that way until we eventually find the right property for them.
When you're representing the seller, what do you look for in the offer beyond just the price?
Well, it's actually not just about the price sometimes. It could be about the conditions of the offer as well. What I mean by that is, are your terms favourable to the vendor? Do you have some flexibility? I mean, the vendor might want a longer settlement, a shorter settlement, and the buyer might as well. Is your finance unconditional? Do you need a cooling off period? Because, the preference is to take an unconditional sale. So if there's only a 5% sort of buffer between buyers, quite often the vendor will lean towards that unconditional buyer. So it really is about the terms of your offer.
Especially in the Sydney market, we are so driven by unconditional offers as well. I don't deal with a lot of call offs. It's very far and few in between, especially in the inner west, inner city area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important too when you do. I mean, we have to be respectful of the market and the buyer. For example, a lot of first-home buyers, they have their pre-approval, so they can certainly go out there and shop. They've got their borrowing power, but it may be subject to valuation and so forth. So we've got to be mindful and respectful of that. And quite often, I've already mentioned that to the vendors before I list the property. And, if somebody does need a cooling off, it's important to ask what's the reason for that. Is it for valuation or is it for due diligence? Is there something you're not happy with in the strata report that you need more time to sort of, look over the details and so forth?
From your side, as a selling agent, what are the key things that buyers should prepare for before submitting an offer to you?
Well, finance is a big one. I've had a lot of experience, even at the first open homes where people have said, oh, we'll offer this today. Or, once we're doing the follow-ups, they want to offer something, in terms of a number. And then when you drill down, it's like, well, come on, guys, you haven't even got your finance yet. That's when the truth starts coming out. We've just submitted our application. So we're really looking for, what level of finance you're at. Are you ready to go? Because things happen quickly. If we get an offer and it's where the vendor needs to be, we're likely going to exchange that day. So you've got to be ready and you've got to be prepared to act quickly.
Doing all your due diligence prior to even submitting an offer is important.
Yeah. Quite often, the buyers will submit an offer subject to contract amendments or something like that, and that's okay. But if there's competition, there's more than one buyer, quite often we'll say, look, you have to have all those ducks in a row first. Make sure your solicitor or your conveyancer has done the amendments, you've got your 5% or 10% agreed, and you're ready to go. And hopefully, as we mentioned, a 66W certificate, unconditional, would always be good.
I love it. What is an unconditional 66W for our listeners?
Well, basically, there's two ways of buying property. You can buy property unconditionally. So a 66W certificate just waives a cooling off period. I mean, all New South Wales contracts for sale come with a 5-day built-in cooling off period. So that certificate comes from the purchaser's side, and it just means that they're essentially buying under auction conditions. There's no pulling out, and there's no cooling off period. There's no subject to finance or anything like that. The deal's done.
What are common mistakes that buyers make when they're dealing with selling agents?
I think one of the common mistakes is giving away too much too early, but similarly, not showing interest as well. Like we just said, if somebody's showing interest in a property and then we go to call them on Monday to give them an update, they're non-responsive, they're not communicating. So I think that's one of the key mistakes. I mean, if you're a serious buyer and you're really out there in the market wanting to buy the right property, you need to communicate with the agent. We're not saying give all your cards away, but certainly you've got to steer the agent in the right direction so we can, best help you find that property.
Give us an example of a buyer giving away too much.
Well, coming in with too much emotion, I think is a good one. Wow, we love it. I want to give you an offer today. What is it going to take to buy the property? Well, that's great. I love that enthusiasm. But, that buyer has to understand there is a bit of a process. We may have other contracts out. We've got to sort of call the other buyers as well. We've got to speak to the vendor. So I guess show your interest, show you're genuine, but just sort of hold back a little bit and then rely on the agent. And that's when that communication comes into play as well.
Yeah. I find on the other side that when you love something, and I have clients that are very emotionally driven and they want to offer something straight away, but I've had experiences where the vendor's not ready
That
mentally
yeah,
for it.
that's a really good point. Sometimes, and depending on the relationship I've got with the vendor, I mean, my vendors, I usually have a very close relationship with them. But that's a really good point because sometimes if you give an offer too early, the vendor's just not ready.
Yeah.
Or they may be just sitting back thinking, well, that was a bit too easy. That, we got that in the
Yeah.
first week. Let's wait and see what happens in week 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So that's again about that relationship that an agent has with the vendor. I'm very clear with my vendors and I position them and I say, you know what, if I bring you an offer in the first couple of weeks, it's quite often that's where the buyer is. We see that time and time again. The activity is there in that first couple of weeks. So don't think that you're going to get more the longer you hold on. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, yeah. And in order to find that out as well, it's going back to asking the right questions, understanding the vendor's profile as well, because some profiles of a vendor, they're so emotionally driven by their home. They love it. They just want to get the most amount of money for their home, which every vendor wants, but they want to see through, 2 weeks or right through to the auction. Others are quite savvy. They're like, hey, this is my number. If I get it on a contract, it's done.
Yeah.
But asking those questions, and in order to ask those questions, you need to build a relationship with an agent. And I think that's so crucial for buyers to understand. Not every agent is out there to just, I don't know, manipulate the situation. There are very honest, genuine agents out there, and I think we have like intuition to understand who's a decent agent versus who's not.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's important to build those relationships.
It is, and quite often it was just a recent deal actually I did last week where I actually said to the purchaser, don't give me an offer yet. It's a little bit too early. No, I showed them off market at the photo shoot. They wanted it. They kept missing out. They even had a representative call me saying, Darren, what do we need to do to secure the property? And I said, well, this is what you need to do. You need to just stand back a little bit. Give me a couple of days. Let me get through that first Saturday open home, and you'll be absolutely the first person I come back to. So, you know what I mean? You've got to be a little bit strategic sometimes.
Yeah. How does a buyer build a good relationship with a selling agent without hurting their negotiation power?
I think it's just communication. And like I said, I mean, if you're working in a marketplace, you're quite often seeing that buyer all the time. Even if a buyer is not interested in my property, I stay with them. I might even suggest another property. Hey, this one looks really good. And it could be listed with another agent. I think the buyers need to do the same. Check in every once in a while with your agent. Hey, do you have anything off market coming up for me? Or, because we do a lot of business off market by that very relationship building.
I'm going to read this out.
Okay.
Sometimes buyers aren't sure how much they can really trust what an agent says. From your perspective, what's the best way for buyers to cut through the sales talk and get to the facts? This is like the number one pet peeve.
I think, again, it's just being a good communicator and being concise with your questions and being a little bit smart with your questions as well. And getting back to what I said before, just asking the right questions. Too many times buyers come to me and say, well, what will it take to take a property off the market? And, what's the motivation behind the seller rather, and why are they selling? And I think, well, the property's on the market. You can be assured they're selling. They've just paid $10,000 in marketing or, they've engaged an agent. And I try and reassure the buyer that way. I said, well, don't worry, the property's selling, it's on the market. So I just think just asking the right questions, getting back to that, have you had any offers, any contract, how many contracts have been issued and so forth.
Yeah. Clients come to us after they've had some really daunting experiences trying to buy properties directly through an agent. And one of the most common things I hear is, we put in an offer on a property and all of a sudden another buyer shows up with an offer and we don't know if the agent's bluffing or not.
Yeah.
And I just want to understand from your side, what should buyers understand about that process and why that might have happened?
Yeah, and that could be a really devastating situation when it does happen. And in fact, I'll get to that in a moment, but it happened with my colleague Brighton just today. So buyers need to understand that the property is on the market. Even if you get offer and acceptance, congratulations, your offer's been accepted. And that's what we mean about you've got to be prepared to move quickly because the property's still on the market, and it does happen, Kelly. You will just, there's other buyers that could be just circling, waiting, because we need to let the other buyers know we've got an offer and the property is selling. So quite often, well, not quite often, but sometimes you will get somebody putting their hand up and be prepared to offer more once you've already accepted an offer. So essentially, until contracts are exchanged and the property's still on the market.
I don't like being gazumped.
Yeah.
And I always prep my clients in terms of when are you going to be available to sign contracts?
Yeah.
And I ask the agent, when's your vendors ready to sign contracts?
Yeah.
So then I can kind of anticipate when it could be officially exchanged, because I've come into negotiations very last minute as well. And I've been in situations where I've waited long and we got another buyer come through out of nowhere and put in a higher offer.
I think the other thing to be mindful of as well, and this is what I try to sort of talk to buyers about, it's about your relationship with your conveyancer and your solicitor as well. Because if you put that offer in and it's been accepted, yet your conveyancer can't get to the contract until this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and quite often as agents, we're sitting back going, okay, what's going on here? We're ready to exchange. So I always let my buyers or my vendors know when we're about to get an offer and I think it's where we need to be. I'll call them and I say, can you please put your conveyancer on standby? Let them know something's probably about to happen.
Yeah. I love my conveyancer because I can call her on a Sunday and get a 66W.
Mine too. Oh, that's why we love working with buyers agents, because you've got everything sorted.
Yeah.
If you make an offer, buyers agents typically, if they make an offer and it's accepted, they've got the 66W in front of you, the deposit ready to go. So that's really, really important.
If you could give buyers one piece of advice to help them work with the selling agents more effectively, what would it be?
Be available, communicate, and be honest. Don't, like I said before, you don't have to give too much away, but, if you're meeting agents, quite often the agent will act as your advocate and your buyer's agent as well. I didn't mean to, so we're taking your job, but
that's fine.
You know what I mean? It's like, just be honest and communicate with them. If you're coming through the open home and we've met you a couple of times and we're following up, don't not communicate or ghost just because it's not the property for you. Let us know, why.
Why do you like working with buyer's agents?
Because I find that if a buyer has gone through the process of engaging a buyer's agent, they're either just very time poor, they don't have time to go out and shop and look around for themselves, or they've had a really bad experience. And I also see buyer's agents understand the industry, they understand agents' practice, they understand there's a sense of urgency, and they're always ready to go. And they're acting in their client's best interest all the time. And buyer's agents, good buyer's agents, the ones that I know, like yourself and any of the buyer's agents in my market, they formulate really good relationships with agents. So they can tap into the off-market stock, and they've always got conveyancers, solicitors that they can call after hours or on a Sunday and just get deals done, basically.
Thank you so much, Darren, for joining us. I think that our listeners would have found some very good insight and knowledge and advice from you. And I'm forever grateful. And hopefully one day in the near future, you'll present me an off-market that my clients absolutely love and I'm going to buy.
I've got a great penthouse right for you. No, it's always good to see you, Kelly. Thanks for inviting me on, and I'm sure we'll do that deal very soon.